I hate it when anyone uses the term authoritarian leadership because it is completely inaccurate. Authoritarianism is not leadership. It is the enforcement of obedience to an arbitrary authority figure at the expense of one's personal freedom. That includes personal safety and survival. Authoritarians are characterized by their lack of concern for others, making them completely antithetical to genuine leaders. My name is Tricia Sulpizio. I'm your host for another episode of Tea and Bedtime Stories. It's a podcast for anyone who likes stories about stories. In this episode, I'll continue reading A Farewell to Arms. It's a novel by Ernest Hemingway, published in 1929. Last time I read Chapter 8 in Book 1, and I'll continue the story with Chapter 9. It's a long chapter, so I'll be reading it in two parts. We'll begin with Part 1, and after the reading, I will follow with quick facts and my impressions. So let's begin again with Book 1, Chapter 9, Part 1. The road was crowded, and there were screens of corn stalks and straw matting on both sides, and matting over the top so that it was like an entrance at a circus or a native village. We drove slowly in the matting-covered tunnel and came out onto a bare, cleared space where the railroad station had been. The road here was below the level of the riverbank, and all along the side of the sunken road there were holes dug in the bank with infantrymen in them. The sun was going down, and looking up along the bank as we drove, I saw the Austrian observation balloons above the hills on the other side, dark against the sunset. We parked the cars beyond a brickyard. The ovens and some deep holes had been equipped as dressing stations. There were 3 doctors that I knew. I talked with the major and learned that when it should start and our car should be loaded, we would drive them back along the screened road and up to the main road along the ridge where there would be a post and other cars to clear them. We hoped the road would not jam. It was a one-road show. The road was screened because it was in sight of the Austrians across the river. Here at the brickyard, we were sheltered from rifle or machine gun fire by the riverbank. There was one smashed bridge across the river. They were going to put over another bridge when the bombardment started, and some troops were to cross at the shallows up above at the bend of the river. The major was a little man with an upturned mustache. He had been in the war in Libya and wore 2 wound stripes. He said that if the thing went well, he would see that I was decorated. I said I hoped it would go well, but he was too kind. I asked him if there was a big dugout where the drivers could stay, and he sent a soldier to show me. I went with him and found the dugout, which was very good. The drivers were pleased with it, and I left them there. The major asked me to have a drink with him and 2 other officers. We drank rum, and it was very friendly. Outside it was getting dark. I asked what time the attack was to be, and they said as soon as it was dark. I went back to the drivers. They were sitting in the dugout talking. When I came in, they stopped. I gave them each a package of cigarettes, Macedonians, loosely packed cigarettes that spilled tobacco and needed to have the ends twisted before you smoked them. Monero lit his lighter and passed it around. The lighter was shaped like a Fiat radiator. I told them what I'd heard. "Why didn't you see the post when we came down?" Passini asked. "It was just beyond where we turned off. That road will be a dirty mess," Monero said. "They'll shell the blank out of it. Probably." "What about eating, Lieutenant? We won't get a chance to eat after this thing starts." "I'll go and see now," I said. "You want us to stay here, or can we look around?" "Better stay here." I went back to the major's dugout, and he said the field kitchen would be along, and the drivers could come and get their stew. He would loan them mess tins if they did not have them. I said I thought they had them. I went back and told the drivers I would get them as soon as the food came. Monero said he hoped it would come before the bombardment started. They were silent until I went out. They were all mechanics and hated the war. I went out to look at the cars and see what was going on, and then came back and sat down in the dugout with the 4 drivers. We sat on the ground with our backs against the wall and smoked. Outside it was nearly dark. The earth of the dugout was warm and dry, and I let my shoulders back against the wall, sitting on the small of my back and relaxed. "Who goes to the attack?" said Gavusi. "Bersaglieri." "All Bersaglieri?" "I think so. There aren't enough troops here for a real attack. It is probably to draw attention from where the real attack will be." "Do the men know that who attack?" "I don't think so." "Of course they don't," Manera said. "They wouldn't attack if they did." "Yes, they would," Pacini said. "Bersaglieri are fools." "They are brave and have good discipline," I said. "They are big through the chest by measurement and healthy, but they're still fools." "The Granatieri are tall," Manera said. This was a joke. They all laughed. "Were you there, Tenente, when they wouldn't attack and they shot every 10th man?" "No." It is true. They lined them up afterwards and took every 10th man. Carabinieri shot them." "Carabinieri," said Pacini, and spat on the floor. "But those grenadiers, all over 6 feet, they wouldn't attack. If everybody would not attack, the war would be over," Manera said. "It wasn't that way with the Granatieri. They were afraid. The officers all came from such good families. Some of the officers went alone. A sergeant shot 2 officers who would not get out. Some troops went out. Those that went out were not lined up when they took the 10th men. One of those shot by the Carabinieri is from my town," Pacini said. He was a big, smart, tall boy to be in the Gratanieri. Always in Rome, always with the girls, always with the Carabinieri. He laughed. "Now they have a guard outside his house with a bayonet, and nobody can come to see his mother and father and sisters, and his father loses his civil rights and cannot even vote. They're all without law to protect them. Anybody can take their property. If it wasn't that happens to their families, nobody would go to the attack." "Yes, Alpini would. These VE soldiers would. Some Bersaglieri. Bersaglieri have run too. Now they try to forget it." "You should not let us talk this way, Tenente." "Evviva l'esercito," Pacini said sarcastically. "I know how you talk," I said, "but as long as you drive the cars and behave. And don't talk so the other officers can hear," Manera finished. "I believe we should get the war over," I said. "It would not finish if one side stopped fighting. It would only be worse if we stopped fighting." "It could not be worse," Pacini said respectfully. "There is nothing worse than war. Defeat is worse." "I do not believe it," Pacini said, still respectfully. "What is defeat? You go home. They come after you. They take your home. They take your sisters." "I don't believe it," Pacini said. "They can't do that to everybody. Let everybody defend his home. Let them keep their sisters in the house. They hang you. They come and make you a soldier again, not in the auto ambulance, in the infantry. They can't hang everyone." "An outside nation can't make you be a soldier," Manera said. "At the first battle, you all run, like the Checos. I think you do not know anything about being conquered, so that you think it's not bad." "Tenente," Pacini said, "you understand you let us talk. We understand you let us talk. Listen, there is nothing as bad as war. We in the auto ambulance cannot even realize at all how bad it is. When people realize how bad it is, they cannot do anything to stop it because they go crazy. There are some people who never realize. There are people who are afraid of their officers. It is with them that the war is made. I know it's bad, but we must finish it. It doesn't finish. There's no finish to a war." "Yes, there is." Pacini shook his head. "War is not won by victory. What if we take San Gabriel? What if we take Carso or Monfalcone or Trieste? Where are we then? Did you see all the far mountains today? Do you think we could take all them too? Only if the Austrians stop fighting. One side must stop fighting. Why don't we stop fighting? If they come down into Italy, they will get tired and go away. They have their own country. But no, instead there is war. You're an orator. We think, we read, we are not peasants, we're mechanics. But even the peasants know better than to believe in war. Everybody hates this war. There is a class that controls a country that is stupid and does not realize anything and never can. That is why we have this war. Also, they make money out of it. Most of them don't, said Pacini. They are too stupid. They do it for nothing, for stupidity. We must shut up, said Monera. We talk too much, even for the tenente. He likes it, said Pacini. We will convert him. But now we will shut up, Monera said. Do we eat yet, tenente? Gavuzzi asked. I'll go and see, I said. Gorgini stood up and went outside with me. Is there anything I can do, tenente? Can I help in any way? He was the quietest one of the four. Come with me if you want, I said, and we'll see. It was dark outside, and the long light from the searchlights was moving over the mountains. There were big searchlights on the front, mounted on camions that you pass sometimes on the road at night. Close behind the lines, the camion stopped a little off the road, an officer directing the light, and the crew scared. We crossed the brickyard and stopped at the main dressing station. There was a little shelter of green branches outside over the entrance, and in the dark the night wind rustled the leaves dried by the sun. Inside there was light. The major was at the telephone sitting on a box. One of the medical captains said the attack had been put forward an hour. He offered me a glass of cognac. I looked at the board tables, the instruments shining in the light, the basins and the stoppered bottles. Gordini stood behind me. The major got up from the telephone. It starts now, he said. It's been put back again. I looked outside. It was dark, and the Austrian searchlights were moving on the mountains behind us. It was quiet for a moment still. Then, from all the guns behind us, the bombardment started. Savoir, said the major. About the soup, Major, I said. He did not hear me. I repeated it. It hasn't come up. A big shell came in and burst outside the brickyard. Another burst, and in the noise you could hear the smaller noise of bricks and dirt raining down. What is there to eat? We have a little pasta asciutta, the major said. I'll take what you can give me. The major spoke to an orderly who went out of sight in the back and came in with metal basin of cold cooked macaroni. I handed it to Gordini. Have you any cheese? The major spoke grudgingly to the orderly, who ducked back into the hole again and came out with a quarter of white cheese. Thank you very much, I said. You'd better not go out. Outside something was set down beside the entrance. One of the two men who had carried it looked in. Bring him in, said the major. What's the matter with you? Do you want us to come outside and get him? The two stretcher-bearers picked up the man under the arms and by the legs and brought him in. Slit the tunic, said the major. He held the forceps with some gauze in the end. The two captains took off their coats. Get out of here, the major said to the two stretcher-bearers. Come on, I said to Gordini. You better wait until the shelling is over, the major said over his shoulder. They want to eat, I said. As you wish. Outside we ran across the brickyard. A shell burst short near the river bank. Then there was one that we did not hear coming until the sudden rush. We both went flat, and the flash and bump of the burst and the smell. Heard the singing off of the fragments and the rattle of falling brick. Gordini got up and ran for the dugout. I was after him, holding the cheese, its smooth surface covered with brick dust. Inside the dugout were the three drivers sitting against the wall smoking. Here, you patriots. How are the cars? Monera asked. All right. Did they scare you, Tenente? You're damn right, I said. I took out my knife, opened it, wiped off the blade, and pared off the dirty outside of the cheese. Gavusi handed me the basin of macaroni. Starting to eat, Tenente. No, I said, put it on the floor, we'll all eat. There are no forks. What the hell? I said in English. I cut the cheese into pieces and laid them on the macaroni. Sit down to it, I said. They sat down and waited. I put a thumb and fingers into the macaroni and lifted. A mass loosened. Lifted high, Tenente. I lifted it to arm's length. The strand cleared. I lowered it into the mouth, sucked and snapped in the ends, and chewed, and then took a bite of cheese, chewed, and then drank of the wine. It tasted of rusty metal. I handed the canteen back to Piscini. It's rotten, he said. It's been in there too long. I had it in the car. They were all eating, holding their chins close over the basin, tipping their heads back, sucking in the ends. I took another mouthful and some cheese and a rinse of wine. Something landed outside that shook the earth. 420 or Minnewerfer, Gavusi said. There aren't any 420s in the mountains, I said. They have big Skoda guns. I've seen the holes. 305s. We went on eating. There was a cough, a noise like a railway engine starting, and then an explosion that shook the earth. This isn't a deep dugout, Piscini said. That was a big trench mortar. Yes, sir. That concludes part 1 of chapter 9. Now we'll get into some quick facts and my impressions. The war in Libya that they mentioned, that the major fought in, had only ended in 1912. It's where Italy took Libya from the Ottomans. The granatieri is the Italian word for grenadiers. Grenadiers are men who, in the infantry, a special unit of men in the infantry who throw grenades. That's why they're called grenadiers. And they're selected primarily for their height. I guess that was the joke that he was making. But I do want to defend them. These men are anything but weak. The granatieri, who fought in the mountains, were men of great valor. By all accounts, they fought with their hands when they ran out of munitions. In fact, on Monte Cengio, which is a mountain in the Alps, the Italian grenadiers held off the Austrians with rocks when they ran out of weapons. Some of them, they fought to the death. They grappled with their enemies and pulled them along with themselves over the cliffs to keep them from taking territory. If that's not heroism, I don't know what is. There's a monument in the mountains. It's called Salto dei Granatieri. And it's a memorial to their sacrifice up in the mountains. It looks beautiful. But the Alpini that he was referring to are the specialized troops that are trained to fight in the mountains. On skis or whatever, they haul equipment up the side, big guns up the sides of cliffs. It's crazy what they're able to do. VE soldiers stands for Victory in Europe soldiers, so some people enlisted on the side of the Allies before America declared war, which wasn't until 1917, so the war had been going on for 3 years before the Americans officially joined, and so some American citizens and Italian-American citizens enlisted as VE soldiers. When Piscini said, "Eviva l'esercito," that just means "long live the army" in Italian. That's why he said it sarcastically. And I think when they were referring to the defectors being shot, they might have been talking about the Battle of Caporetto, where over 300,000 casualties were felt by the Italians. Tens of thousands of men were captured in that battle by the Austrians. Big guns, everything. And Luigi Cadorna. He was the member. You remember he was mentioned in the last chapter. He was the head of the army, basically, and he was 100% responsible. He was an authoritarian moron, and he was 100% responsible for all the losses that they suffered in the Battle of Caporetto. He basically ignored the intelligence reports that told him exactly where the Austrians were going to strike, and he foolishly front-loaded that area with more soldiers than were needed. Instead of staggering them, he put them all in the front, and then he pulled back reinforcements so far back that they couldn't even help them. It was just a humongous waste of resources. And even when the other generals were trying to beg him to pull their troops back, he ignored their requests. And the Battle of Caporetto is still considered the worst battle in Italian history. And it's all due to the incompetence of little Luigi Cadorna. But when they talk about pasta asciutta, it literally means dry pasta, but it's not dry pasta like we think of dry pasta. We think of dry pasta as uncooked pasta. It was spaghetti that they were eating. To them, dry just means it's not soupy. So it's pasta mixed in some kind of sauce, but tomato sauce usually, but it's not a soup. So that's why they call it dry. But when I was talking about the different munitions, 420 is the millimeter size of the mortars. Those are humongous shells, right? Minenwerfers, that's the German word for mine thrower. The Skoda guns, they look like mini cannons, and they shoot really high up in the air so they can go over fence lines and things like that. The 305s also shot big shells, but they weren't quite as big as the 420s. So those are all the quick facts I have, and my impressions. Not to harp on little Luigi, because he's dead now. Hope he's burning in hell. But what a loser. Sorry, it included some videos in the description. If you don't believe me, it's a short video. I would check it out. But he was so incompetent. And there were a lot of incompetent managers of the war on every continent. But I think it's safe to say he was one of the worst, if not the worst, because he was an authoritarian and he didn't know how to be a leader. It's no wonder that the mechanics were discussing their options and consequences of desertion, because as they said, they're thinking men. I know a lot of mechanics, and they're problem solvers, so they use their brain, they use reason all the time. Reason requires information gathering. Authoritarian ideals do not. So they're in stark contrast with each other in terms of the way their brains work. But a thinking man would never choose to follow someone like that. And I think that's true for all humans. Once we reach a level of understanding, like he says, we can't go on. Our brain's primary function is to protect itself. So it'll operate independently of even our will. I talk to my students about perception. It's one of the subjects that we cover in my course. And I tell them, like, your brain is working without your knowledge. And they always look a little puzzled, but I usually ask, like, how's your liver functioning? Because we don't know how our liver's functioning, but our brain does. It knows what it's doing. And once our brain figures out that we're putting it in danger, it usually screams at us to stop. Which is why authoritarianism as a strategy just doesn't work long term. A genuine leader will use their work ethic, character, expertise, charisma, anything to influence or persuade others to follow them. And they don't coerce anyone. An authoritarian, all they have is coercion. And they have to force people to follow them. That's why at some point people go, no. And it's true that only weak men seek to control others using force. And I say that because using force to subjugate others doesn't make you strong, despite idiotic popular opinion. Any hysteric can land a blow that causes injury. And I'll tell you a little story. I used to run a nursery at my church, and I watched a toddler take down a grown man with a shot to the genital area. This kid thought it was hilarious to punch men in the penile area. And I didn't think the little monster was any kind of a hero. I just put the little punk in timeout every time he did it. But it shows what I wish someone would have done to little Luigi Cardona. Put him in timeout before he got all those stupid men killed. Sorry, they weren't stupid. He was stupid. He's just the definition of idiot. And I have to say, I do have a lot of respect for people who serve in armed forces, because I know I could not do it. I value my person far too much. I mean, if someone came after either one of my kids, I would commit murder to protect them. I'm not a pacifist, but beyond that, I just don't see anything worth killing for. And call me what you will, but I know I couldn't go over the top. They'd have to shoot me too. And some people will think, like, I don't love my country because I say that, because I refuse to take up arms, but I would argue that I sacrifice for my country's future every day as a teacher. I know that I work tirelessly to help the next generation of young people become responsible citizens. I teach them how to be genuine leaders, people who think before making decisions that negatively affect others. I'm a patriot. War is just gross in every way, and I think it's disgusting to blame soldiers for their actions, because they all act in good faith. They believe that they're serving the greater good, and I can respect that. Anyway, sorry, I didn't mean to preach, but those are all my impressions of Chapter 9. It's starting to get good, or at least Part 1 of Chapter 9. They're in danger. So I'm kind of excited to read the rest of this chapter. But in the next episode, I'll continue reading with Book 1, Chapter 9, Part 2 of A Farewell to Arms. Please join me again for more tea and bedtime stories. I look forward to talking to you again soon. Thanks for listening.